to 12 years before that plant actually goes into operation. Now, you can call me an optimist, but I'm telling you that we're making great progress on this technology. And I see the opportunity for these new carbon capture and sequestration technologies to come online at or near the time these new plants come online. So if we're going to keep electricity reliable, if we're going to make sure that we're using affordable energy resources, if we're going to have these carbon control technologies, we have to have a robust market for those technologies. And so I don't think that right now the best method of bringing these technologies to the marketplace is to have a moratorium. We need to be building new coal plants to meet our growing demand for energy and also ensure the market for these new technologies that we're hoping to rush to the marketplace as soon as possible.
Michael Brune, you sent Al Gore handcuffs?
Sure, I did. You know, just to respond to Joe and then talk about civil disobedience, the coal industry itself says that the ability to capture and store emissions is at least 10 to 12 years away. Joe talks about how coal plants take 8 to 10 years to build. Why would we want to wait that long? It takes 2 years to build a massive wind farm, 2.5 years to build a large solar facility, 2 weeks to put solar panels up on a rooftop. We know that the new economy has to be based on clean energy. Let's start today. This is why Al Gore did talk about the fact that there is no such thing as clean coal. There is no blueprint for a coal plant that can capture and store its emissions. There's no plants that are under construction. He says that the single biggest crisis facing our climate today is the construction of new coal-fired power plants, and so he's proposing that young people engage in civil disobedience. Civil disobedience has brought our country out of its darkest hours. It's helped to end segregation laws. It's helped to end unjust wars. It's helped to secure for women the right to vote. It is time for people today to engage in peaceful, nonviolent, and creative protest to create a clean energy future.
So, Michael Brune, what does it mean to you that tonight in the debate that the presidential candidates will have, some of them, the major party candidates, this is an issue they fully agree on? In fact, at the Democratic convention, clean coal was everywhere. The advertisements for it, trucks were riding around with it, they were sponsoring events.
I've read about this in my book, Coming Clean. It means that we have work to do. You can go to followthecoalmoney.org and find out who are the largest recipients of coal industry cash. You can go to followtheoilmoney.org and find out who are the largest recipients of oil industry cash. To get clean energy, we're going to need a clean government. And we won't be saved by either administration. And so come January 20th, if you're a progressive activist looking to create a clean energy future, you have to get to work.
Well, what about that issue of the coal money and who, well, basically who Joe Lucas represents? He represents the coal companies.
He does. He represents big coal, the utilities in the coal industry that are writing energy legislation today. The bailout that we saw last week had significant guarantees for so-called clean coal money.
What do you mean?
There's about $2.5 billion in loan guarantees that were provided for the construction of so-called clean coal technology. And again, that's $2.5 billion that is much better spent on energy efficiency and clean power.
Joe Lucas, did the coal companies, your organization, the American Coalition for Clean Coal, weigh in on the bailout? Were you satisfied with that bailout?
Well, keep in mind, we support the advancements of technology that will allow us to meet this challenge of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And so from that standpoint, we see this as a partnership between the federal government and private industry to bring these first-of-their-kind, first-of-their-scale technologies to the marketplace. And so from that standpoint, these are technology incentives that have been debated throughout the Congress numerous times and numerous bills that had not passed that got added to this omnibus piece of legislation. But I want to go back to two things that Michael said. First off, there is a blueprint for building a carbon capture, near zero emissions coal plant that also produces hydrogen. And that blueprint was developed in the Clinton administration that Vice President Gore was a part of. We've been trying to get the demonstration of that project off the ground in FutureGen. That was a project that was going to be the technology demonstration project that was going to build this plant. It was going to be in Mattoon, Illinois. Late last year, the Bush administration sort of put that program on hold. What they said, instead of building one big plant, they wanted to build 7 or 8 smaller plants. One of the things that's in this bailout bill is the fact that it preserves the decision to move forward with FutureGen so the next president can decide. The other thing that I want to raise, that Michael keeps talking about solar and wind, the question that I have, how do you produce electricity from solar and wind when there's not sufficient wind speed or not enough direct sunlight? That's why renewables are intermittent power resources for the most part. They can be used for peaking power, not baseload power, which is what you use coal for. That's why I'm saying it is not a choice of either or. In many cases, it's a combination
Michael Brune,
of both wind and solar.
Last comment.
Sure. Well, just wanted to talk about FutureGen. The Bush administration realizes that it's a financial boondoggle. If the Bush administration...
What is it?
The FutureGen is this idea of a new plant that might be able to capture its emissions. If the Bush administration isn't supporting a big plan for a new coal-fired power plant, you know that it has problems. Most executives are calling it NeverGen because it never will be built. And to address the issue of how we can meet our baseload needs with renewable power, just look to other countries. Denmark gets a massive proportion of its power from both hydroelectric plants and wind power, and they don't have any problems with baseloads. When we scale up both solar and wind, and when we scale up geothermal and hydroelectric power, all of those sources will begin to balance each other out, and we can start to retire coal plants and replace them with clean energy.
Well, I want to thank you both for being with us, for sharing with us some diverse opinions that we're not going to hear tonight on the issue of clean coal in the debate. Michael Brune, Executive Director of the Rainforest Action Network. His new book is Coming Clean, Breaking America's Addiction to Oil and Coal. And Joe Lucas, Vice President of Communications for American Coalition for Clean Coal Electricity. When we come back, we'll be joined by Antonia Yuhas. She has a new book out, The Tyranny of Oil, the world's most powerful industry and what we must do to stop it. Stay with us.
Drag lines at my heart, they're tearing us apart, and the mountainside where we were born. Must I weep and mourn for the land it took 10 million years to form? Now all my eyes can see are just the bleeding scars across the mountainside, across the mountainside. Coalport, PA, just a little town tucked too far away for anyone to know. But the folks born and raised for 6 generations, working day by day, trying to keep themselves a home. Drag lines at my heart, they're tearing us apart, and the mountainside where we were born. Must I weep and mourn for the land that took 10 million years to form? Now all my eyes can see are just the bleeding scars across the mountainside, across the mountainside. Our neighbors down the road, they farmed 12 acres, worked a heavy load, poor as dirt, though they tried, till the coal company came through, said, we'll mine your land, take the burden off of you, and we'll see that